From the Millersville University Weather Center, this is student meteorologist Peter Corman.
And student meteorologist Tali Deusch. And today is another episode of Weather Watch where we will discuss Hurricane Helene.
So let's get right into it. Right now, if you look at the satellite, Hurricane Helene is a Category 4 hurricane recently just upgraded from the National Hurricane Center with maximum sustained winds of 130 miles per hour and a minimum central pressure of 947 millibars. So looking at our satellite here, we can see the convection rotating around an eye that's been trying to clear in these recent frames, which is the usual indicator of continued intensification. I remember just 2 days ago when this was a 45 mile per hour tropical storm, and here we are 2 days later, still continually rapidly intensifying. And I believe we will continue intensifying up until landfall. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get up to like 140 miles per hour. Taking a look at the radar over here, you can see the eye wall and eye continue to become better defined as it's quickly moving off to the northeast at like over 20 miles per hour. And this motion is going to continue to slowly speed up a little bit more as it approaches landfall here. We can quickly take a look at the recon data over here. They just sent a NOAA 2 plane into the storm, and you can see the minimum central pressure here is down to about, it extrapolates about 947. That's about what the aircraft hunters found with the drops on, and you can see these flight level winds are upwards of 136 knots. Typically for something like this, if you do a conversion of about 0.9-ish, so 136 times 0.9 gets you about 122 knots. And typically you would blend this with SFMRs. This is just surface winds estimation, but since we don't have that available, you can go straight with the number. However, the NHC did go with 150 knots or 130 miles per hour for this advisory. Another thing you can note from this data alone is the core is slightly, it's a decent size. The eye is about 25 to 30 nautical miles, and you can see the wind field is rather broad, and I've been looking at some stats, and it's certainly one of the biggest storms we've seen in this region in a long time. If we go over to the cone here, you can see the tropical storm wind field, I believe, is about 350 miles, and the hurricane wind field is about 60 to, I think, 75 miles. So,
So talking about this model, so you can see the red is where there are hurricane warnings, and that is mainly in Georgia, and then there is a tropical storm warning in the rest of Georgia and South Carolina and part of Tennessee. And as you can see in the white area, it's gonna, throughout the weekend, it's gonna turn that way into the Tennessee Valley area.
Yeah, so you can see here on the cone, you can see it's forecasted to make landfall somewhere in the Big Bend of Florida sometime in the next 3 to 4-ish hours from now. Currently at 6:30, it's probably closer to 3 to 4:10. It's going to continue to race northerly, start to turn more northwesterly, and then as we move into Friday, as it moves into the Tennessee Valley, it'll start to slow down quickly, and it'll essentially stall over the Tennessee Valley before it dissipates out. So moving over to, and you can also see the hurricane warnings are pretty far inland. You know, we don't typically get hurricane warnings far inland into almost Atlanta. But since storms moving so fast, it's going to cover a lot of ground super quickly compared to some other storms in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So going over to the storm surge.
Storm surge throughout. There is a huge storm surge throughout pretty much the entire coast of Florida, and specifically from Carolina to Suwannee River. Sorry for my pronunciation. In the purple area. It is a storm surge predicted from 15 feet to 20 feet, which is extremely detrimental, and we cannot stress enough how much you need to get away from the coast, because most of the damage from hurricanes come from storm surge, and even if you're not in that purple area, you still want to get away because it's not good, and it can intensify, and the hurricane's path can change, and you can be in that path of danger, and we don't want that to happen.
Yeah, so it's something you can note here is you can tell like the center is going to come up about right into this region here. You can see most of the flooding is going to, the worst of it's going to end up to its east with this fact that this is like an east-based system, which is important to note. So you can see like even down to Tampa, they're expecting like 5 to 8 feet of storm surge. However, you go to west and you go to the west, not a lot, and the storm surge drops off quickly. So we're going to move over to talking about,
in this model for the storm surge warning, pretty much there is a storm surge warning from Mexico Beach all the way down to the Everglades, which is a huge span of land, just stressing again how wide and big this area is and how much we need to take this into accountability and pay attention to the storm surge and keep ourselves and our communities safe and stay away from the coast.
Yeah, you can note where like they have the storm surge totals from anywhere above like 1 feet, 1 to 3 feet, is where they have those storm surge warnings, except down in the Florida Keys where they've probably already expired since the storm has moved away. And then another big threat from this storm is rainfall.
So for the rainfall, as you can see in this map, we have 3 different colors. In the green, that's going to be the lightest amount, where you're going to get around 2 inches. The darker green is going to be 4. The yellow is going to be around 4 to 6. And then in the very darker area, which Peter can point out for you guys, that's going to be the most amount of rainfall, which is going to be around 8 to 12 inches.
Yeah, this area right up here has already dealt with a lot of rain in previous days. It's from a predecessor rainfall event, which is rainfall events that kind of usually follow even bigger rainfall events. So part of these regions up here in like the Carolinas and to Virginia already have experienced a lot of rain, so they're going to be more prone to flooding. And then as Tali mentioned, a kind of general 2 to 4 inches across most of the region. You see that these areas of 4 to 6, kind of where the Iowa comes ashore, and then up into the Tennessee Valley, up into like Georgia, the Carolinas, and then that locally higher amounts in the mountains ranges of upwards of 16 inches even.
And there's just going to be a lot of rainfall, and mainly for the southeastern U.S. and the Tennessee Valley, and then onto the day predictions. So this is day 1 prediction, and there's an excessive rain outlook for pretty much the entire southeast of the U.S., and it goes up into Tennessee and western of the Carolinas, and that's really important to check out because we want you to see where it is, and you can see where the darker the colors are, more rainfall. And even if you're in a lighter color, that doesn't mean you're completely safe of it because it is just still a lot of water.
Yeah, they're focusing that highest amount. You see that pink high risk, where the highest chance is essentially for flash flooding or any sort of flooding is right kind of where that eye comes ashore in a few hours. Kind of the Florida bend into Georgia, and then kind of up into that area of Carolinas, and then it kind of continues on. The flooding threat essentially kind of sits around that region we point out where we could see 8 to 16 inches of rainfall.
Do we want to talk about flooding, what to do in flooding situations at
Well,
all?
yeah. So in a flooding situation like this, you obviously want to try to get to high ground as soon as possible. You don't want to stay on low-lying grounds, or especially near creeks or streams or any kind of water source where there's rushing water. It takes like 6 to 12 inches of running water to just sweep you off your feet. So, especially with the amount of rain we're dealing in this region, this is a very serious event. And I've seen the National Weather Service up in like North Carolina stress about how like this is like a once in like a generational event for the region.
And it's really important to have an emergency plan in this situation and stay on higher ground. If you see someone out there, call 911. Do not put yourself in a life-threatening situation where you might not be able to help someone.
So taking into the last part of this, so we discussed the huge threats about this, the extreme winds, which will be making landfall with the eye wall. We should see extreme wind warnings here shortly as the eye wall begins to move ashore. The devastating storm surge that will impact the Big Bend, and then the potentially for devastating to catastrophic flash flooding extending pretty far inland. So I'm going to talk about the tornado threat a little bit here. So currently we've had a few tornadoes today already. You can see here, mostly in, if we look at the filter reports, there's been 2. There was a tornado report in South Carolina. You can see the one in Georgia as well. We've had several tornado warnings across the southeastern region today. I expect this to continue for the rest of the day. The SPC has a day 1 enhanced risk for severe weather, which is highlighted by a 10% tornado risk. If you want to read down discussion briefly, they mentioned the supercells and any that can develop amid any sort of surface instability will have the potential to produce tornadoes, giving favorable shear and thermodynamics. There's not much else. They have a 5% wind probability out. Going to get some strong isolated wind gusts with those storms, but the main threat is the tornado threat, and it's going to focus around this area essentially from Jacksonville up the coast to Wilmington. But you see the 5% tornado risk back in like Charlotte down to Tallahassee. Typically we see most of tornadoes with tropical cyclones in the right front quadrant of storms. So you can see as the storm comes in, that right front quadrant is essentially like east of Atlanta where the tornado risk exists. And then we move on to day 2. There's also a tornado risk, a 10% tornado risk. This one's mainly centered around like northeastern, extreme northeastern South Carolina, southeastern North Carolina. There's a 5% that goes up into Charlotte, Raleigh, kind of to Virginia Beach. Kind of expecting something similar to today, where we'll see supercells training onshore with potential to produce tornadoes. We're going to go over to one of our convective allowing models here. This is the ARRR, and you can see we go hour by hour. You can see some of these supercells here along the coast, moving onshore, Georgia, South Carolina. Some of these down here might have tornadoes today if I just take a quick sounding. You can see so kind of what we look for here is instability and shear. We have some instability here. Cape values are about 800. That could be enough to support tornadoes. And you look at the photographs here, it's just the wind profile plotted on like that way. So it just kind of roll the numbers. 370 0 to 1 kilometer SRH is a lot. Typically, you will get a lot of storm relative helicity with these setups. So it will obviously tend to produce a tornado threat. You can see we go through the night. Supercells kind of continue moving onshore. Probably, if my guess, there might be a bit of a lull overnight, but I think a tornado threat will continue. But if we move up to the north, to the mid-Atlantic sector here for tomorrow's tornado threat, you can see kind of those first initial rounds. This is the eye wall of Helene as it continues to rapidly move northerly, and you can see this next like arc of supercells beginning to march onshore across the region, across the Carolinas, essentially throughout the day. On Friday, they'll continue to move easterly, kind of clear the shore, and then kind of after that, our tornado threats kind of dies out as it moves offshore, and you can see what's left of Helene just kind of spinning over the Tennessee Valley, kind of like right along like the Kentucky-Tennessee border. Well, that will be it for Weather Watch. I'd like to thank everyone for watching.
Thank you.
Please stay safe out there. This is an extremely dangerous situation. I can't stress enough. This is for the Big Bend region. It's really hard to see it. Look back at history and see a storm like this has happened before. I know they had a Dahlia last year, but obviously this is going to be significantly worse given the size. So
stay safe.
thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.